Assalamu alaikum, guys. Good evening. Today we are going to discuss the topic entitled as digestion and absorption. We are left behind only with the two topics to be discussed in this term. So this is our second last topic today, and hopefully we'll have one more topic, inshallah, after that. So we'll be having the class tomorrow in the same time at 7, and inshallah I'll try to finish the course content by that class. Uh, so let's start the digestion and absorption. You have got the idea about the process, but this is part of the course, so we're gonna have an overview of what digestion and absorption means in terms of biochemistry. We all need energy, and this energy is being supplied by the food. The food is not the only thing that gives us energy if we don't have oxygen to burn that food. So the concept of respiration is that this oxygen is needed to burn the food in order to get the energy out of it in the form of ATPs, adenosine triphosphate, which is the ready-made currency of energy in the human body or in animal body. So the food is a primary source of energy required by all living organisms, especially when we talk about the animals. And the next step is to get the energy out of the food by burning the food in presence of the oxygen. Beside the function of the food as an energy source, the food is also required for the as a building block for the bodies as well. Like for example, if you're taking the proteins, you will get amino acids out of which you use the amino acids for the body's own protein. Then you have carbs, and then you have fats, which not only give you the energy but also provide the basic building block or the basic material for manufacturing of different things within the body or for the synthesis of different things within the body. For example, the food for the raw materials like amino acids, as I said, sugars, fats, nucleotides, these all actually come from the food, and they are the raw material for many of the molecules which are synthesized within the body. As I said, that the most common source of the energy currency in our body is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. We'll be discussing about this triphosphates in a little bit more detail later on. We divide the animals on the basis of their dietary requirements or the dietary habits. These three categories are herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. We know that herbivores are the one that rely on plants for their source of the food. Carnivores are the animals which eat other animals, and omnivores are the category which rely on both animals and plants as a source of their food. The human actually comes in the category of omnivores. So now, once we get the food or we take the food, the next step is utilization. And we can divide that in different stages in order to understand the whole process. So the first stage is ingestion. Ingestion means taking in the food. That means the food normally we chew in the mouth, and that is the process of ingestion actually. And then this food is being chewed, and then we swallow the food, passes through the esophagus, and then reaches the stomach. As soon as you get the food or you ingest the food, the next step is started, and the next step is digestion. Now, the digestion is actually being defined as the breakdown of the large, complex molecules into simpler, smaller particles. And this digestion could be of two types: mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. The mechanical digestion is simply the breakdown of the complex, large, big molecules into smaller particles, smaller pieces. And that mechanical digestion is primarily going on in the mouth when we chew the food with the help of our teeth, and some sort of mechanical digestion also takes place in stomach, where the contraction and relaxation of the stomach also bring about some mechanical digestion. While in case of the chemical digestion, where we use the chemicals to break down the food, this digestion is primarily the breakdown of the complex molecules into their monomers or into their simpler forms. That is what we call the chemical digestion. And as I said, that primarily it is being done by the molecules like enzymes. The purpose of both of them is to simplify the food. Once the food is simplified, it is available for the next step, and the next step is absorption. So that means before the absorption, the food must be simplified into small monomeric units which can be absorbed easily. The next stage is absorption, where that food which is being digested by mechanical and chemical digestion will be absorbed across the cell membrane by either the process of diffusion or by the process of active transport. We know that the diffusion is a process where the movement takes place from higher concentration to lower concentration, and it's an automatic process. It's a natural process, rather, I would say. While in case of the active transport, you need some sort of energy to transport, because you are taking the things, uh, you know, away from the concentration gradient. So in this case, you need energy because you are taking the nutrients or the material from lower concentration to higher concentration, or you might have some sort of barriers which will not allow the diffusion to take place. So in that case, you need energy, and that is being called as active transport. So the absorption of the food involves both the processes, the process of diffusion as well as the process of the active transport. The last stage of this process is elimination. And elimination is actually the part of the food which is somehow remained undigested or not required by the body or in excess, that has to be uh, taken out of the body, and that is what we call the process of elimination. So the process is being divided into four stages as ingestion, digestion, absorption, and elimination. Now, this is the picture of a human digestive system, and I'm sure that you have gone through these pictures before that. It's just an overview to give you an idea. The process of ingestion actually starts in the mouth, as I said, and there are a couple of things that takes place in this region. There are certain glands which produce certain secretions like saliva, which lubricates the food. Then you have tongue, which is also the part of that mechanical machinery to roll the food and helps in the mechanical breakdown, along with the teeth which crush the food. And then you have this esophagus, where the food which is being pulpy after being partially broken down in the mouth will go through the esophagus and reaches the stomach. Now, stomach is the first site where the food will stay for some time. The top part of the stomach is called the cardiac site, and the other one is the pyloric site. So in the stomach, you have the food being stored here, and as I said, the stomach also undergo contraction and relaxation movement, which will help in the mechanical breakdown. But there are certain chemicals coming from different regions, like bile juice coming from the pancreas, and certain enzymes within the stomach, which helps in the mechanical as well as chemical breakdown of the food into small monomeric units. Typically, in the stomach, the pH is acidic because of the release of the HCl, and that's why it's somewhere lying in between pH 1 to 2. So the enzymes which are optimally working in the stomach are those who are optimum in their working at acidic pH. Then after staying there, the food will then go to the next region, which is the small intestine. The small intestine will have different regions like duodenum, ileum, and jejunum. But we are not going in that detail at this stage. But the point is that the small intestine is the part where the process of absorption starts. And because of the small blood capillaries around them, this simplified food, which is being crushed and digested within the mouth and the stomach, is being now absorbed in the bloodstream of the small intestine, and then thereby it reaches the blood, and we know that from the blood it will be then transported to all the cells. So what is left behind or undigested or unabsorbed will go to the large intestine and then the rectum, and then this food will be eliminated out, or undigested part will be eliminated out. So let's start with the first part, from the mouth. As you can see that there's a role for different organs, like as I mentioned earlier on, tongue has its own role along with the teeth, which will crush the food. And we have this particular site where I want to make sure that you can see there are two pathways. One is your respiratory tract and the other one is the digestive tract. Now that's a very sophisticated mechanism. When you have the food chewing within your mouth, and then the moment you start to swallow the food, automatically the pathway that is going towards the respiratory system will be closed, and you have the only pathway available where the food is going to the right spot, which is the stomach. While in case, in some time, you might have seen that when you are doing a lot of activity or speaking a lot or eating something in a hassle, it might happen that this bolus of the food, instead of going to the digestive tract, will go towards the site of the respiratory system, and that is what we call the choking, because the food is not allowed to go in that part, and that's how there is a phenomenon where the food is being vomited out. There is a specific movement which facilitates this bolus of the food to go from mouth to the esophagus, and that particular movement is called peristalsis. Peristalsis is the involuntary muscle contraction which facilitates the movement of this bolus of the food from the mouth to the esophagus, and from the esophagus to the stomach. Now, as I said, in the mouth, there is the part of mechanical digestion, primarily by the teeth. And there is also chemical digestion, which is being produced by certain chemicals. The first of that is called the saliva. Saliva is a secretion that comes from different glands within the mouth region, and that saliva contains few enzymes like amylase, which is actually a particular enzyme to help the digestion of carbohydrates. The saliva itself has got an alkaline pH, so the enzymes which are present in the saliva or present in the mouth are the one which optimally work in alkaline pH. Then we have mucin, which is just there to give this slippery part to allow the bolus of the food to go through the mouth and reaches the esophagus. That's what the mucus function is. It also protects the lining of the digestive system from being corrosive or from being damaging, and it lubricates the food for an easier swelling. Then there are certain buffers there to neutralize acids present in your diet to prevent the tooth decay, because some food naturally are acidic in nature. So you need those buffers in the mouth. And then we have certain antibacterial chemicals which play a vital role in killing the bacteria coming through the food in the mouth before they go and enter your digestive tract. So you have amylase present in the saliva, then you have mucin, which is primarily for lubrication, then you have buffers for neutralizing the acidic pH, and then you have certain antibacterial chemicals killing the bacteria or other harmful organisms which might come with the food. Now, in the mouth, as I said, the food is being broken up into smaller pieces. Digestion of the starch has started because of the amylase. Germs have been killed, and food is now in the form of a soft, moistened bolus. And thereby now it's going towards esophagus, and then from the esophagus it reaches the stomach. Now, in the stomach, as I said earlier, the food will take some time to stay, and again, you have both mechanical and chemical part of the digestion in the stomach. In generally, an average, size of a stomach can hold up to 2 liters of the food, which is reasonably big size. But an important point about the stomach is that the stomach is very, very, I would say, flexible, or you can say it's very adaptable. Like, for example, if someone is a good eater and someone keep continuous in its habit of taking large amount of the food, the stomach is capable of accommodating this. In contrast, if someone is a low eater or eats a very small food, the size of the stomach starts to shrink to accommodate that. So in this case, I would say stomach can accommodate large or small amount of the food depending upon the particular dietary habit of an individual. But on, as I said, on average, it fits 2 liters of the food. There is HCl, as I said, in the stomach, and the pH range is somewhere between 1 to 2. And this pH also will kill any bacteria if it has escaped the killing process in the mouth. And then you have the chemical digestion. The most important of that chemical digestion is the enzyme pepsin. And the pepsin is the enzyme that is particularly involved in the digestion of the protein. So we can say that digestion of the carbs was initiated in the mouth by amylase, and the digestion of the proteins is being initiated in the stomach by enzyme pepsin. So you can see this picture. You have food particles, you have gastric juice, having HCl and the pepsin enzyme, and that's how it starts the digestion process. As I said, that there is mechanical part of the digestion as well, because sometimes stomachs also have got this contraction and relaxation phenomenon which crushes the food, but mainly it's the chemical digestion that takes place in the stomach, and you can say that there's a small portion of mechanical digestion as well. There is also mucus secreted by the stomach, and this is for the self protection of the stomach, because there is HCl with the pH 2, which can cause damage to the epithelial cells. So the mucus lining of the stomach is self protection for the stomach itself from that such a high acidic pH. So we conclude that in the stomach, we also have the process of killing germs. We have the process of the breakup of the food. Digestion of the protein is started, and food is being stored for quite some time, between 2 to 3 hours. There is a medical condition which we all are aware of, ulcers, which is sometimes being also called as gastritis or reflux esophagitis. What actually happens in this case, there is a phenomenon where someone, if it's eating food, feel like that this food, instead of going in the inward direction, it's coming out opposite way. That means feel like a vomit condition, where the food, instead of going in, it's feel like coming out. That's what we call the reflux esophagitis. So actually the esophagus has the function to push the food downward in the stomach, but in this case it's working in the opposite direction. The most common reason for this is actually the infection in the stomach, or the inflammation of the stomach, as you can see in the picture. The most common reason for that inflammation is a bacteria called H. pylori. And that bacteria, if it's present, causes the inflammation of the stomach, and that inflammation of the stomach would result in this sort of reflux esophagitis or ulcer condition. So this is actually normally being controlled by taking antacids medicines. There are antibiotics to cure the H. pylori as well. And you can also avoid this condition with having a good food habits instead of taking spicy and hot food. The mild to the alkaline food can be a good source to reduce the causes of or the symptoms of the ulcer. Then comes the small intestine. Small intestine functions involve chemical digestion and also absorption. So in chemical digestion, the major organ of digestion and absorption is actually the small intestine. But once the digestion is being done, the absorption also starts here. You can see the length of an average small intestine is about 6 meters. It's quite a bit long, and it's being folded around within our belly. The small intestine has a huge surface area because it's so long, 6 meter, and the average, you can say the surface area is about 300 meters square, which is approximately the size of a tennis court. So you can think about how big the surface area of the intestine is and how sophisticatedly this intestine is being, uh, adjusted within our bellies. It has three regions: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. The duodenum is the part where most of the digestion takes place. Jejunum is the part where the absorption of the nutrients and water take place. And ileum also has got the same function of absorption of nutrient and water. So the first section of the small intestine, as I said, is duodenum. The food that is coming from the stomach was acidic, if you remember. So it mixed with the digestive juice, which is coming from the pancreas into the small intestine. And this digestive juice is also being accompanied by certain secretion coming from liver and gallbladder, what we call the bile salts and bile acids. So together, these secretion, when they mix with the food, they increase the pH of the food back to the alkaline condition. Along with that, they also have got certain enzymes in that which actually play a very key role in the final digestion of the process. So the digestive enzymes here in the duodenum are trypsin. Trypsin is a proteolytic enzyme used for protein digestion, and chymotrypsin is also another proteolytic enzyme. While for the carbs, we have the enzyme amylase. So you can see that in small intestine, we have enzymes for the digestion of both proteins and carbs. While earlier on, we studied that the process of digestion of the carbs started in mouth, and for the proteins, that was started in stomach. There are certain buffers which function to neutralize the food which is highly acidic coming from the stomach side. So now in the pancreas we have a secretion which is being sent to the small intestine. This produce enzymes which are involved in the digestion of proteins and starch, which I just mentioned above. Liver is also an important part of this system where it produces the bile. The bile is stored in the gallbladder until it is needed. Once the food comes in the small intestine, then this breaks up, reaches the destination. And this bile is very important to break up the fat molecule. And it will act like a detergent, which will allow the enzymes to act on the lipids to finally do the breakdown. The bile also contains the color from the old red blood cells, and iron in the RBC rust and makes species brown in color. So in the liver function is to produce the bile, and bile is, as I said, is stored in the gallbladder once it is needed. Once it reaches the small intestine, it facilitates the breakdown of the fats. The next two parts of the small intestine are involved in absorption process. And the absorption, if you can see the picture, as I said, the small intestine is very long, but it's being convoluted. It's being, adjusted in a way that it has a lot of foldings. So this one is small folding. If you can see this picture, this one, this is called villi, go like this. And in between the villi, you can see there are a lot of blood capillaries. And because of the larger surface area, as I mentioned, it will allow a big surface for the blood capillaries to absorb the digested food from the small intestine. So these villi or microvilli, they are the finger-like projection as you can see in the picture, and they have increased surface area for the absorption of the food. So in a small intestine, what will happen? Breakdown of the food, protein, starch, fats, and absorption of the nutrients. Finally, we have the large intestine, which is the colon. And the function of the colon are, number one, reabsorb water. Whatever is not being absorbed from the small intestine will reach the large intestine, and it has a lot of water in it, and we don't want to waste that water. So it uses about approximately 9 liters of the water every day in the digestive tubes, and that 9 liters of the water that was being used in this, in the process, 90% of the water is reabsorbed by the large intestine in the colon. Why? Because not enough water, if it's absorbed, it's being a wastage of the water. In other case, when there's a medical condition called diarrhea, that's what actually happened in the colon, where the body is not being capable of absorbing that water, and that's why resulted in the diarrhea. And in the other condition, if there's too much water absorbed, that would result in another clinical condition, what we call the constipation. So there should be a balance between the water absorption to keep the conditions of the diarrhea and constipation away. There are certain normal flora or bacteria present in the large intestine, and they are beneficial or helpful bacteria for your body. One of them is E. coli, which produces vitamin K and vitamin B, and they also generate certain gases, which are the byproduct of bacterial metabolism. These gases include methane and hydrogen sulfide. You might have heard that when somebody is infected and we give the antibiotics to treat that infection, sometimes the doctor recommends to give the multivitamins with the antibiotics. The reason for that is because antibiotics not only kill the bacteria that causes the infection, but it also kills the normal flora like E. coli, and thereby it disturbs the metabolic, machinery. So in order to compensate with that, the multivitamins are being given to avoid this condition. So finally, the large intestine, what is primarily going on is absorption of water. There are certain organs within the digestive system, what we call the vestigial organ, for which the known function has not been yet understood. This vestigial organ, which I'm talking about right now here, appendix, is just underneath the large intestine at the cecum part. And this vestigial organ has been identified in the human with no specific function at this stage. And you might have heard of this, that sometimes this appendix is inflamed or get infected, and once it is inflamed or infected, it causes a lot of pain, and it can be dangerous because if it bursts out, then in this case it will result in the spread of the infection in the blood. So normally, appendix is there is no issue, but if it's going disturbed or inflamed or infection, then there is a surgery where we remove the inflamed appendix from the body. The last portion of the digestive tract is the rectum, which is after the colon. It is the part of the large intestine, and this is the point where the elimination takes place, and all the undigested material, waste product, cellulose from the plants, fiber, and a lot of other things get eliminated out via the rectum. So with this, the process of digestion and absorption is done. I already have discussed with you about the balanced diet. If you remember, we have this portion done in the nutrition, so I'm not going to discuss about this again. So with this, we have completed the process of digestion and absorption. And as I said, inshallah, we'll have one last lecture tomorrow to discuss one last topic. With this, we'll complete our discussion, and inshallah, next week on Wednesday at the lab time, we'll have a discussion on the whole lab manual, and I'll also discuss about the exam pattern and also about the lab exam, inshallah, on coming Wednesday. So, if you have any question, you can raise your hand to ask the question. Yes, Saira, go ahead. Yes, Saira, you have raised your hand. Do you have a question? Okay, if there is no question, I'm going to stop the class and inshallah we'll share the recording with you guys once it is available. Thank you very much and for the Hafiz.